record. Okay.
This meeting is being recorded.
This meeting is being recorded. Hare Krishna. So let's go through that again. Now we're being recorded. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. We have, it looks like 10 or more people have joined us, 10 or more. So thank you for joining us. We are on Bhagavad Gita. We're reading Bhagavad Gita as it is by A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. And here comes Mother Gaya. And we're continuing reading the third chapter, text 33. Okay, that's what we're on. As far as I remember, that's what we're reading to begin with today. Mother Gaya, you're out there. I just saw you come in.
I am.
Yeah, could you do the same as last week? Could you
share the link
when anything comes in a chat?
Chat. Yeah, sure. I'll keep an
That'd
eye.
be great. And also, Mother Lavanga, thank you for reminding us. Anyone who'd like to read, you can put your hand up and you're welcome to read. And in case you wasn't here last week, you're joining us for the first time. Reading means we encourage you to read the Sanskrit if you can, but don't worry if you can't, that's okay. And to read the translation and Srila Prabhupada's purport. And then we just pause there, ask any questions, any discussion, etc. like that, okay? So before we begin, also, let's offer some prayers to Srila Prabhupada. He's the author of Bhagavad Gita as it is. So by his grace and his mercy, we have the Bhagavad Gita, and by his mercy, we can understand it and apply it in our lives. So Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Bhastaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Tinamane Namaste Sarasati Devi Gauravani Pachaline Nivasisha Sunyavari Pashtatar Satarine Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ram 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 Hare Hare. Okay, Mother Lavangalatika, you can have the great honor of reading the first verse for today's discussion. 333. I haven't shared my screen. Just one final question before we start. Is there anyone out there who needs to see the Bhagavad Gita, or do you have your own copy with you? If you can put that in the chat. If I don't hear anything from anyone, I presume you have a Bhagavad Gita there, or you're otherwise happy just to hear. But if you would like to see the Bhagavad Gita on the screen, you can let me know, and I can share my...
That says, yes, we need Gita on the screen, please.
Okay, just now coming. 1 second. I'm going to press a few buttons. Share screen. Bhagavad Gita. Okay, you can see now the Bhagavad Gita. All glories to modern technology. Hare Krishna. Okay, Mother Lavanga, let's dive into Bhagavad Gita.
Very great.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Sadisam chestate svasya prakrite jnanavanapi prakritim yanti bhutani nigraha kim karisyati. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Unless one is situated on the transcendental platform of Krishna consciousness, he cannot get free from the influence of the modes of material nature, as it is confirmed by the Lord in the 7th chapter, 7:14. Therefore, even for the most highly educated person on the mundane plane, it is impossible to get out of the entanglement of Maya simply by theoretical knowledge or by separating the soul from the body. There are many so-called spiritualists who outwardly pose as advanced in this science, but inwardly or privately are completely under particular modes of nature, which they are unable to surpass. Academically, one may be very learned, but because of his long association with material nature, he is in bondage. Krishna consciousness helps one to get out of the material entanglement, even though one may be engaged in his prescribed duties in terms of material existence. Therefore, without being fully in Krishna consciousness, one should not give up his occupational duties. No, one should suddenly give up his prescribed duties and become a so-called yogi or transcendentalist artificially. It is better to be situated in one's position and to try to attain Krishna consciousness under superior training. Thus one may be freed from the clutches of Krishna's Maya.
Okay, thank you. Hare Krishna. So any specific questions or comments on this or reflections? Just scrolling back to the verse again. Okay. So I just go to the commentary here, but basically rather than reading it word to word, and also what Prabhupada is explaining here, that despite one's being, say, for instance, say one is being educated in the principles of Dharma, in the principles of religion, still Maya, or the potency of Maya, can bewilder someone, even though they're situated in knowledge. So until one is in full Krishna consciousness, there's always a danger of acting against Dharma, adharmically. Yeah. Because of the, for instance, because of the senses are attracted to the sense objects. So sometimes the senses overcomes one's intelligence. Yeah. So therefore, what's being advised here, or this is what's being stated here. Even a man of knowledge acts according to his own nature. Yeah, for everyone follows the nature he has acquired from the three modes. What can repression accomplish? So, yeah. And Prabhupada says, there are many so-called spiritualists who outwardly pose as advanced in the science, but inwardly or privately are completely under the modes of nature, which they are unable to surpass. Academically, one may be very learned, but because of his long association with material nature, he is in bondage. Krishna consciousness helps one to get out of the material entanglement, even though one may be engaged in his prescribed duties in terms of material existence. So the next verse is very much connected to this verse as well. And it explains more. Any comments upon that or any questions?
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yes, please. Yeah.
So when it is said that what can repression accomplish, what does that mean?
Yeah. Well, see, if we think of the specific situation where Arjuna has a specific nature, and as we know, his nature born, of course, he's transcendental, but his particular nature from the material perspective is of a Kshatriya. Yeah. So Krishna is encouraging him to use his nature, yeah, under his direction.
Mm.
So rather than we artificially describe the repressing one's nature, better to use it, but use it in a dharmic way so that one can become purified. Yeah.
Mm.
So what can repression accomplish? Yeah. So that's what he's saying. Even a man of knowledge, even someone in knowledge acts according to his nature. So better you engage your nature rather than try and repress your nature. So this is the subject of this chapter. It's called karma yoga, which means you're using your specific nature, but you're using it in such a way that you're going to get purified and you're going to come closer to Krishna. So rather than not acting, so-called, just like Arjuna, he was contemplating not acting and leaving the battlefield. But Krishna's no, he's explaining to him, no, better you use your nature. Yeah. What can repression accomplish? I think,
And
yeah, please.
also, I was thinking, it says here that, you're better to be, if you're not Krishna conscious, you're better to be engaged in your material activities, if you're not fully Krishna conscious, and not to become artificially a so-called yogi or transcendentalist. But I was thinking, like, especially in Prabhupada's time, everybody gave up their occupational duties immediately. and joined. Like, so they were giving up all prescribed duties, any like material duties. They gave them up like very quickly. They didn't like wait to become Krishna conscious, or even, you know, on the spot they were doing it. So was that just the mood of the day, or was it like, should we stick more to this in this time, or what's applicable really?
Yeah, very good question. Mahaprabhu Latika, she's speaking about the early days of the Krishna consciousness movement, where most of those, practically everyone who was part of the movement, they lived, or they gave up they gave up everything, as she explained, and they lived within the temple. They became brahmacharis, or what was known as brahmacharinis, you know. So is that what's going on there? Is that applicable to today? Now, I'll ask for comments on this as well, but that's now when someone takes to or engages in the process of sharanagati. In other words, they take to the process of Krishna consciousness. That's not being irresponsible. That's actually being that is the perfection of life, actually, is to surrender unto Krishna. So in that particular context, what they were doing was the potency of Srila Prabhupada as well, in order how he influenced people to completely turn their lives around, and engage full-heartedly in Krishna consciousness. And for those people, there's definitely no loss, because they've absolutely surrendered to Krishna. So therefore, that's why it's also described, I think we read a few verses back as well, and in the purple, Prabhupada describes that for someone who has surrendered unto the Lord, then they have no duties to perform, because they're surrendering unto Krishna, then everything is taken care of. Yeah. So, and then, and just like Arjuna, it's a little bit different. See, Arjuna or Krishna is empowering Arjuna to perform a specific duty, which is to help establish Dharma. So if Arjuna, for instance, if Arjuna tells Krishna, I'm not going to be a Kshatriya, I'm going to join a Hare Krishna temple. That is not, in this particular circumstance, that is not the surrender that is needed at this particular time and place. To surrender for Arjuna at this particular circumstance is to use his abilities in Krishna's service. And having said that as well, all those who joined Krishna consciousness, they came with their specific natures, and those natures were used in Krishna consciousness, in spreading Krishna consciousness. Some of them used their, if they had a Kshatriya spirit, they was then put in positions of managers, put in position of leaders, etc. And everyone would come with their specific abilities. So they didn't repress their nature, they used their nature in Krishna's service. So you understand those points there? But anything on that, Lavangalatika? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, that's
Anything
right.
further on that?
Thank you. Yeah.
But you mentioned, what to do today. Was that part of the question?
I mean, because most people don't follow that model today. Like they don't know, most people, they take a graduals. If they're going to, say, join the temple, they don't join immediately. There's like a little period where they come for frequently, and then they might stay maybe a few nights a week, and then they gradually move in, or if they're going to move in, or they just, work out what way is best for them, like to, follow a career and join that in their Krishna consciousness somehow. And so that would be their occupational duty. They would follow more a material prescribed duties rather than like joining the temple immediately. And yeah, so
Yes. Yeah, perhaps I'll open
it's
it up.
changed a little bit.
Yeah, I've got a few thoughts on that, but perhaps I'll open it up. Anyone who has any comments on this, what Mother Lavanga and Latika is saying?
Yes, there are comments in the chat, Prabhu.
Okay, thank you. Some of the devotees don't have the option to move into the temple, even if they want to. Yeah, that's a good point. What we're seeing, practically speaking, is that over the years we have kind of, you could say, as a movement, as a society, we have matured in the sense that Krishna consciousness can be practiced in any situation. You just have to apply the principles of Krishna consciousness to your own specific situation. Now, for some people, it may be, normally for persons who are younger, they don't have any particular, you could say, any particular attachments, any particular responsibilities as such. They may not be married and they may not have children. So in their particular situation, the opportunity of spending some time in a temple is open to them. And it's expected that for those who join a temple, most of them will join for some time. Yeah. And then they will move out of the temple. They will get a job, etc., get married, etc. But what they learned within the temple, they will apply to their life, like that. So, anyone else has any comments on this? This is from, thank you for joining us again, Dr. Heike Das.
Another comment just popped in.
Yeah, I see that. I'm just looking at that. I do feel juggling between work and family and attending temple duties is like walking over a sharp sword and needs to balance oneself. Yeah, I think everyone experiences the same thing. I mean, that's why the idea is that the atmosphere in a temple, or what you see done in a temple, you should establish that to not to exactly the same degree, but to whatever degree you can at home. So therefore, devotees are encouraged to have deities or pictures at home and do some worship, some puja, offer their food to Krishna, engage in hearing at home, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam. One is encouraged to do that. So it's not like one or the other. You have Krishna consciousness at home, and also obviously have Krishna consciousness when you come to the temple. You have Krishna consciousness when you attend the temple. Yeah, so you can, it's not, you're going from one extreme to the other. And Katuri, I join with my children. They've been living away for some time now, and I still can't join the ashram because I'm not a brahmacharini. Yeah, so there's a specific circumstance. Yeah. And most persons, I was just replying to a letter today, actually. Someone wrote to the temple and it's forwarded it to me. They're 50 years old and they was asking, is it possible to practice Krishna consciousness not in a temple? So obviously this person's new to Krishna, just discovering Krishna consciousness, and they're 50 years old. So perhaps the option for moving into the temple is perhaps not an option. But being within a temple is not absolutely needed to become Krishna conscious. It may help in some circumstances. In some circumstances, it may not help. It might be too much for some people to come to that standard of the schedule. Yeah. And some people, just like Katerina, she's explaining, she's got children, etc. like that. So she has responsibilities there. So she might not exactly, it might not work if she lives in the ashram. Yeah. So many different.
It would also be like Chandravali and myself. When the kids were young, we couldn't join or move into the temple because the children were too young, and they did not encourage women with young children to move into the temple.
Yeah.
Now the children have grown up. We've grown older as well. So we haven't got the energy to stay in the temple so long. We need a little bit of space.
Yeah. So therefore, you practice Krishna consciousness at home. Yeah. Yeah. So Krishna
Yes,
consciousness
literally.
is not dependent upon the
Time, place,
basic
and
belief.
circumstance.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not. You can apply yourselves and become Krishna consciousness in any situation. And something here from Anvesh Sandeep. If everything is illusion, then what is real? If illusion is also a God creation. All right, different subject here, but it's kind of connected. If everything is illusion, then what is real? Well, first of all, everything is illusion from the perspective, as Krishna will describe later on in chapter 8, Attaining the Supreme, and elsewhere as well. Everything is illusion in the sense that it's temporary. Yeah, but it is factual. It factually exists, but in relationship to the absolute world, it's temporary. So therefore, it's not factual in that context. So if everything is illusion, he says, then what is real? Yeah.
Can I just say Muli Prabhu as well?
Let me just finish it. If illusion is also a
Sorry.
God creation, why is it so difficult to navigate through it? Yeah. Yeah, go on, Mother Suniti Priya, and then we'll come back to this. Yeah.
Yeah. Bhakti Churu Maharaj was saying those time, Prabhupada's time was different. Everybody was joining, but now it's different. If you're householders, you can still carry on practicing your Krishna consciousness as well. And doing those time was different. This time are different now. I remember him saying in the class one day.
Yeah, so the times have changed, as we were saying. Mother Lavonga is bringing up a particular context there. So times have changed a bit, So most persons who practice Krishna consciousness, they will actually practice it outside of a temple, actually. Okay, so
The comment above last has not been addressed as well, Prabhu. Sorry.
yeah. Which one? From Katarina again.
Yes.
Okay, being a devotee and living outside where joining is not an option is very hard because we don't get trained and are lacking the skills and knowledge that those who live in the ashram. Yet you may have a point there, but you have all opportunity. There's nothing holding you back from becoming Krishna consciousness. You can, living outside, is very hard because we don't get trained and lacking the skills and knowledge. Yeah, no doubt there is some challenges there. That's why the temple is there for you to come and you can learn. Yeah, can come and be inspired and learn, be inspired by a morning program, and therefore have some type of morning program at home. Yeah, and don't think devotees living in a temple don't have their challenges. Definitely, even within the temple, I know I've been living in a temple situation. There's challenges there. There's challenges living where you are, and even in the temple, there's challenges. But you can still take advantage of Krishna consciousness wherever you are. And again, from Sandeep here, not quite. If everything is illusion, then what is real? If Maya is God's creation, why is it so difficult to navigate through it? Well, it's not so difficult if you follow Krishna's instructions. Yeah, if you follow Krishna's instructions and take to the process of sadhana bhakti, chanting the holy name of the Lord, then things become a lot more clear. Yeah. And that's the whole point of Krishna consciousness. That's why, for instance, Krishna spoke the Bhagavad Gita. Yeah, no doubt. Yeah, as Krishna says, Devi Isha Gunamayi, this material nature is very difficult to overcome. But then through the process of Sharanagati, the process of surrender, then Krishna will te samsatata yuktanam pajatam patipurvakam. Yeah, as we engage in Krishna's service with love, then Krishna gives us the intelligence by which we can actually come to him. Yeah. Okay. There's a few things there to think about. Any further comments or questions on these points? Otherwise, we can read another verse. Text.
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare
I
Krishna,
would like
please.
to comment because I think when Mother Lavangalatika spoke about the Prabhupada's disciples joining and immediately joining the ashram, I think it's also important that to acknowledge their age, because if they were joining at 25, they were too old, because they were joining like in their early 20s, so they don't have family, they don't have anything like that, so it was okay for them to join.
Yeah, that's the point I was making. Yeah, specific circumstances. They like hadn't began a family for most of them, so they had the opportunity before they had an opportunity there. There was, and so they made good use of that opportunity. Yeah, yeah. Thank you for highlighting that again. Yes. Okay, let's call on Mother Kaya to read. You can read text 34. And please, please do make use of the chat. I've got it up here now so I can see it. If you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, or you can just unmute and ask or make a comment if you like as well. Hare Krishna.
334,
Yes,
correct?
yes, correct.
Indriya sindriya syarte ragadvesho vyavastito tayorna vacham agachet dohyasya paripantino. Synonyms now. Translation. There are principles to regulate attachment and aversion pertaining to the senses and their objects. One should not come under the control of such attachment and aversion because they are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Purport. Sorry. Those who are in Krishna consciousness are naturally reluctant to engage in material sense gratification. But those who are not in such consciousness should follow the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures. Unrestricted sense enjoyment is the cause of material engagement, but one who follows the rules and regulations of the revealed scriptures does not become entangled by the sense objects. For example, sex enjoyment is a necessity for the conditioned soul, and sex enjoyment is allowed under the license of marriage ties. According to scriptural injunctions, one is forbidden to engage in sex relationships with any woman other than one's wife. All other women are to be considered as one's mother. But in spite of such injunctions, a man is still inclined to have sex relationships with other women. These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise they will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. As long as the material body is there, the necessities of the material body are allowed, but under rules and regulations. And yet we should not rely upon the control of such allowances. One has to follow those rules and regulations, unattached to them, because practice of sense gratification under regulations may also lead one to go astray, as much as there is always the chance of an accident, even on the royal roads. Although they may be very carefully maintained, no one can guarantee that there will be no danger even on the safest road. The sense enjoyment spirit has been current a very long time, owing to material association. Therefore, in spite of regulated sense enjoyment, there is every chance of falling down. Therefore, any attachment for regulated sense enjoyment must also be avoided by all means. But attachment to Krishna consciousness, or acting always in the loving service of Krishna, detaches one from all kinds of sensory activities. Therefore, no one should try to be detached from Krishna consciousness at any stage of life. The whole purpose of detachments from all kinds of sense attachment is ultimately to become situated on the platform of Krishna consciousness.
Okay, thank you. Very nice reading. Thank you. All right. Any questions or comments on this? Any reflections here? Quite an interesting verse in purple. Let me just read this here a little bit. Interesting commentary here. According to the dictates of the modes of nature, the conditioned living entity does whatever his mind suggests. Because the mind is surrendered to the senses, whatever we are attached to, raga, we do, and whatever we are averse to, dvesha, we avoid. Krishna here instructs us that our actions should not be based on attachment and aversion, which are stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. The senses are attracted to the pleasures of this world, especially sex and those brought by wealth. They are repulsed to holy places, fasting, selflessly following our spiritual master, and other items that limit sense enjoyment. Shastra directs us to shift our raga and dvesha away from sense gratification by encouraging us to perform our duty with the ultimate aim of acting only for Krishna's pleasure. Then the next verse, therefore, again stresses that we should perform our prescribed duties. Yeah. So what's being described here is regulation, yeah, through the principle of Dharma. Now, for someone who's Krishna conscious, they're going to be spontaneously will practice the right, or they will spontaneously follow the path of righteousness and Dharma. Yeah, that's why Prabhupada is encouraging in the purple for the taking up of Krishna consciousness, or the principles of Krishna consciousness themselves. Automatically, one is following the path of Dharma. Yeah. But what if someone is not on the platform of Krishna consciousness? Then one is advised to lead a regulated life. But to note that regulated sense gratification, for instance, the sacred marriage ceremony, it has a specific purpose. Yeah. The purpose is to fulfill one's desires, but at the same time, because it's sacred, it's an ashram, the idea is that as one regulates one's attachment, one becomes attached to Krishna through that institution. Yeah. So the recommendations for regulation, the idea is that one shouldn't become attached to them, because that, as Prabhupada mentioned in the purple, that he mentioned it could be Royal Road. Yeah, where was that? Yeah, one shouldn't be attached to the, yeah, what is it? These propensities are to be curbed, otherwise there will be stumbling blocks on the path of self-realization. Yeah, so one should keep that in mind as one is leading a dharmic life, a regulated life. Then one shouldn't become to those regulated activities of quote unquote sense gratification. Yeah, the idea is ultimately to become detached. But for most, that may not be possible in one fell swoop. Yeah, so therefore one leads a regulated life, a dharmic regulated life, and then one is naturally detached. They fulfilled their desires. Just like some of you here today, you've had children, you've engaged, you've taken the Krishna consciousness, you've had children, your children are grown up. So you've become purified of that desire, yeah, in a very natural way. Yeah. So any questions or comments on this?
Yes, I think even
Please. Even
after we practiced all our lives and we entered in the Vanprastha, we still have to be careful and not make it a comfort zone. We have to get out of the comfort zone and give up a little bit more sense gratification gradually as we progress into the Vanprastha. That is, otherwise there'll be a rough accident even on the Royal Road.
Yeah,
so
thank you.
Sense
Yeah,
gratification has to be, we have to keep detaching from the sense gratification even until the Vanprastha or sannyas time.
yeah, very good point. Thank you, Mother Rajkishore. So, yeah, even as one's moving through for instance, the Grihastha ashram, and one is following regulations. Don't become attached to those regulations, but even as one's moving into the Vanaprastha ashram, one should also, there's dangers there as well. So we should, for instance, you might start to what the particular dangers there in the Vanaprastha ashram. What would you say, Maharaj Kishore?
In one prasthashram, one person has progressed faster than the other. Another person would say, no, I want to keep eating these sweets and all that, or I want to carry on with the sense gratification of sex, you know. And the other person would say no, and then there'll be midlife crisis.
Yeah.
So the person who has progressed has to stop and wait for the other partner to catch up. So they are getting out of the comfort zone, and slowly, you know, we have to help one another to get out of the comfort zone and progress in the sense gratification. Otherwise, there'll be fights.
Yeah, so you're saying, you know, the path going from the Grihastha ashram to the Vanaprastha ashram as well. Yeah, there may be some, you say the husband or the wife may be making further on a higher platform than the partner. So therefore, yeah. And then sannyas as well. There may be different perks that come with being a sannyasi. There's adoration may come, you know. One may,
pride, the pride will walk in. They'll say, oh, I was born and brought up in like a vegetarian, never touched meat, and they will become proud of it, and that pride will get in. So even in Vanprastha, we have to be careful, otherwise there's trouble. Yeah.
So Prabhupada in this purport, he's quoting from a verse, he's more or less quoting a verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam in the 11th canto, which describes that the conditioned soul is always inclined to illicit sex, meat eating, and intoxication. So it describes that, therefore, religious scriptures never encourage such activities, although there is a dharmic way of purifying these propensities, and it mentions the Vivaha Yagna, for example. So, but the verse goes on to explain that one should not become attached to these things. They are meant to help us to become purified. So if we do it in regulation, then we do it in a dharmic way, then we will become purified. But Mother Rajkishore is bringing up an important point as well, that there could be, even as one's moving from the Grihastha ashram to the Vanaprastha ashram, there may be specific circumstances within the Vanaprastha ashram which one may become unduly attached to, rather than progressing further into Krishna consciousness. Yes, thank you. Anyone else?
Prabhu?
Please?
Yes, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I was listening the other day, on Sunday, I was listening to Jayaveta Maharaj, where he was speaking at the Mano about the Vanaprastha ashram.
Yeah, very interesting.
From what I understood, the biggest danger, I would say, is the grandchildren. Because the Vanaprastha should be for retirement, hold on, let me get my thoughts together. For retirement and the renunciation, and for practicing deeper Krishna consciousness, traveling to holy places, moving to holy places, and not for watching grandchildren, which is, I think, here in the West is actually quite common, where the parents are working and what to do with their children. Okay, grandma, grandpa hotel. So that, I think, is the biggest danger, because also the family ties are there.
Yeah, very good point. I can remember, I also watched that lecture, very interesting lecture. So that's a very good point. Thank you for bringing that out. Yeah, then you start the whole thing again. You know, you've had children and you've brought up children, and then your children have children. And then you go through the whole thing again, more or less. I think he said the grandchildren bouncing on your knee. So it's not that you ignore grandchildren. It's not that, you know, I think Mother Rajkishore has brought up before, there may be ways, by your association, you may inspire the grandchildren in a dharmic way or in a Krishna conscious way. but you should understand that your ultimate, that you should understand that for your specific own Krishna consciousness, you should map out a good, you should map out your life in such a way that you don't become like a full-time babysitter for the grandchildren. Like they understand, like your children understand that you are not going to be a full-time carer for the grandchildren. You're now going to be spending your time, developing or chanting Hare Krishna, going to different, perhaps traveling if your health allows it, traveling to other temples. Anyone like to offer some comments on this?
Yeah, I was thinking that even for the youngsters to give up, practice higher level of Krishna consciousness, I think we should really look at once your sadhana is good, you will automatically from within start giving up little bits and pieces here and there, and you'll make progress, But we really have to practice on our sadhana. Our chanting should be good, our reading, things like that, should be good. And then it will naturally come. You don't have to practice too high to give up things. And about these grandchildren and that, yet again, when you are practicing properly, yes, you will do your duty. Like I go one evening on a Sunday when they go cooking, but you have to, from within, you have to detach. Okay, it's a service you're doing. Look at it as a service. Oh no, my grandchildren, this, that, whatever, And also look at how in your family, how your grandmother has been there, and how you lot have grown up, and have kind of, you are detached from them as well. How one gets detached. So you do it as a duty, but not be attached to grandchildren and things like that. They're going to grow up, they're going to have their own lives, and you're going to be left there on your own somewhere.
Yeah, very good point. I think Baba Chandravali speaking from experience. So first point she's making about don't underestimate the power of our regulated devotional practice. Yeah, and the purified intelligence actually comes from that, to actually make the right decisions in balancing our life. Yeah. And then
Sorry. I was thinking, like, say, for youngsters, I'm just saying, like, say if you're sitting in an exam and you have this question and you have about 3-4 answers and you have to tick the right answer. It's according to how you're making your spiritual progress. You pick the right answers, and then as you're picking, you will make advancement by picking the right answers.
Yeah, and also like the point you made about having a natural sense of detachment, even when dealing with family members, or specifically here with one's in the vanaprastha stage, dealing with one's grandchildren. You mentioned about having a natural detachment that comes from a spiritual practice.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your children.
Like I've seen my mother, and she's got so many grandchildren. Okay, which grandchild she's looked after them so much, fed them this, that, everything, got everything for them. My grandchildren. Now, which grandchild is near her? She's 89. Who is near her? Who is going to go and see her? Who is doing what? This is a material world. So from that you learn that, okay, I will do my duty, but not be attached.
Yeah. Very good point. So do your duty.
Not to think that my grandchildren are going to look after me. No. Start changing that to Krishna will make the arrangements. Krishna will do this. Krishna will do that.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah. Have faith in Krishna.
That's it. Change it to Krishna, yes.
And
someone else?
Prabhu, and I think, as Chandravali said, is Krishna does help you situation like that, because you pray for them to detach yourself and just focus in your Krishna consciousness all the time. And looking after the grandchildren as well, because they see you as a grandmother and father that you're practicing, they are learning from you as well. That helps.
Yeah. That's the point, though, but they're learning from you as well. But also just be, we have to be careful that when we're actually attached, we're becoming more attached to our grandchildren, and in the name of them learning from you, you're kind of compromising yourself. You understand? So just be aware of that as well. Okay, you're teaching you're inspiring your grandchildren in Krishna consciousness, but at the same time, you may be just developing your attachment. You understand?
Yeah,
So
I
how do we
understand.
balance
But
that? Yeah, so okay,
yeah.
So it's a balancing act. I think that comment came up. It's a balancing act. Yeah.
Prabhu, there are 2 comments in the chat.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I do also feel visiting temples, places of worship, listening to verses, etc., bring a change in oneself. Yes, very much so. That's why the temples are there, actually. And that's why we, as the brahmacharis, we maintain the temples specifically to facilitate people coming and taking advantage of the temple, and being inspired by the temple. So Mother Gaia, you mentioned here, never expect anything in return and you will never be disappointed. Okay, that's pretty good. Never expect anything in return and you will never be disappointed. Children and grandchildren belong to Krishna. We perform our duty without expectations and then move on. I guess very nice. That can kind of summarize what we've been explaining.
Yeah.
Everyone has something else just come up here. Anvesh Sandeep, thank you. Everyone will come and leave, but Krishna is there always with the consistent love towards us all. Towards us all the time. It's better to focus on which is permanent. Yeah, very good. Yeah, very good point. Thank you, Anvesh. Anybody else like to make any points on this?
I would like to.
Yes, please go ahead.
Because Mother Chandravali, she mentioned something in the sense that if we have proper sadhana, then we're gonna get detached and this and that. Yes, it
will
works.
help
But
for
for
sure.
me,
Yeah.
But for me, it was like when I got my Guru Maharaj first, then he said to me, "Oh, I would like to see you getting married. I want you to find a husband." And for me to actually do something like that, to actually talk to men and this and that, is a big impediment to my sadhana. And he saw that whenever I would start to actually talk to someone, my sadhana would just straight go to the bin. So then he said, okay, you don't need to take vanaprastha. So it's like, it depends also on the condition and nature.
Yeah, I missed the last part. Can you just say the last at the end there? I just missed. You said you approached the Guru.
No, that he said to me, okay, you don't need to get married, you take vanaprastha.
Okay.
Because he knows I don't want to, and I have my children, I don't need more. And it was like literally whenever I would start to talk to a Prabhu, my sadhana would finish, there would be nothing, like zero. So he said, no, better you take vanaprastha.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, very interesting. So so according to your specific temperament, but your specific situation, then your Guru Maharaj kind of gave a specific direction for you. Yeah. So that's the right thing to do, is to approach the spiritual master, and then he will give a specific guidance. Yeah, so it's very personal in that regard, the application of Krishna consciousness and the different practices and different levels of practical renunciation and how we live. It can be very personal, and often it's different from one devotee to another. But the overall direction, it's a nice comment here. I really like this comment here, with all good comments from Anvesh. I'll read it again. Everyone will come and leave, but Krishna is always Krishna is there always with the consistent love towards us all the time. It's better to focus on which is permanent. Yeah, and Mother Gaia's comment as well. Children and grandchildren belong to Krishna. We perform our duty without expectations and then move on. Okay, very good. All right, that was one verse, I think. Let's try and read another verse. Nice discussion. Let's see, what's the time? We have a few minutes left. Let's, Mano Mohini, you like to read?
Yes, Prabhuji.
Go ahead, Mother. Text 35, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, it is 35.
Okay, go ahead.
Svensa dharmo vigunaha paradharmatsva anustitat swadharme nidanam shreya paradharmo vayavaha. Translation purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. It is far better to discharge one's prescribed duty, even though faultily, than another's duty perfectly. Distraction in the course of performing one's own duty is better than engaging in another's duties. For to follow another's path is dangerous. One should therefore discharge his prescribed duties in full Krishna consciousness rather than those prescribed for others. Materially prescribed duties are duties enjoyed according to one's psychophysical condition and the spell of the modes of material nature. Spiritual duties are as ordered by the spiritual master for the transcendental service of Krishna. But whether material or spiritual, one should stick to his prescribed duties even up to death, rather than imitate another's prescribed duties. Duties on the spiritual platform and duties on the material platform may be different, but the principle of following the authorized direction is always good for the performer. When one is under the spell of modes of material nature, one should follow the prescribed rules for his particular situation and should not imitate others. For example, a brahmana who is in a mode of goodness is non-violent, whereas the satyrs who is in the mode of passion is allowed to be violent. As such, for a satyrs, it is better to vanquish following the rules of violence than to imitate a brahmana who follows the principle of non-violence. Everyone has to cleanse his heart by a gradual process, not abruptly. However, when one transcends the modes of material nature and is fully situated in Krishna consciousness, he can perform anything and everything under the direction of a bona fide spiritual master. In that complete stage of Krishna consciousness, the Kshatriya may act as a Brahmana, or Brahmana may act as a Kshatriya. In the transcendental stage, the distinction of the material world do not apply. For example, Vishwamitra was originally a Kshatriya, but later on he acted as a Brahmana. Whereas Pashuram was Brahmana, but later on he acted as the Kshatriya. Being transcendently situated, they could do so, but as long as one is on the material platform, he must perform his duties according to the modes of material nature. At the same time, he must have a full sense of Krishna consciousness.
Okay, thank you. Right, it's an amazing purport by Srila Prabhupada. We've only got 5 minutes to discuss this. Perhaps we might continue discussing this tomorrow. But any particular questions or comments on this here? This verse, more or less word to word, comes up again later on in the Bhagavad Gita. It's one of 2 verses that are repeated. One is man mana mavat bhakto majjati mam namaskuru. That is more or less repeated verbatim again. And this is another verse as well. We're going to find this same verse again later on in the Bhagavad Gita. And there's an interesting comment here I'm just seeing, which just in relationship to what we just explained, we should be careful to do our own duty and not the duty of another. Duty like medicine prescribed by a physician has its proper curative effect only upon the patient to whom it has been prescribed. A spiritual master prescribes different duties for different individuals according to their natures. I think Katerina, it was just explaining how her spiritual master gave her a specific direction, based on the particular situation and her specific nature. But in essence here, is there any questions on this? Any comments?
Swadharma. Swadharma for a
Dharma.
woman is to look after the family, look after the children, and make home, not a house, make home properly.
Yeah.
Now, if a woman decides to go out to work, then that dharma is not Shreya. It's acceptable, but what, as per Krishna says, the Shreya and dharma is one person has that specific dharma to look after the home and the children.
Yeah, a very good point, Mother Bhagavad, because the tendency is when if things seem difficult or they may seem unattractive, is to give up one's specific duties. Yeah, and that's when life becomes complicated. Yeah, that's when, for instance, that's also by being situated in a specific varna or ashram and sticking to one's duty. So sticking to one's duty means that there's going to be challenges. But those challenges, if one sticks to one's duty, will purify the heart and give one a sense of detachment. But if one runs away or tries to adjust artificially their duty, or for instance, or neglect their duty, then they're not going to become purified. They're going to be more entangled in the material world. So that's why Krishna is explaining to Arjuna this specific verse. Yeah, you should do, okay, you should do your duty, even though, for instance, he's going to have to kill his kinsman, he's going to kill his relatives, and he's thinking of doing someone else's duty. But no, you stick to your duty, Arjuna. Don't take to another's duty. And there's difficulties in every duty. There's going to be challenges. Yeah. So, sorry, someone was saying something and I kept them.
Yes, we put a comment in the chat. Just before
Okay,
we
thank you. What to do if Krishna has taken those duties away? I don't know. But speaking about a specific situation. See, that has to be that has to be decided specifically on these circumstances. Yeah, so then you would consult with authorities what to actually do. It seems like this particular duty in my life is now changing, but it shouldn't be based on your own whims. You may whimsically come to that conclusion, but it may be mistaken. So therefore, you want to make sure that the next step you're making is the correct one and you're doing it for the correct reason. It's not a whimsical decision if you have to stop a specific set of prescribed duties, you know. And I wanted to comment on the end of this purport here as well, but let's just go to Anvesh Sandeep again. Thank you. How can one achieve transcendental nature to switch the duties like Parashuram from Kshatriya to Brahmana and vice versa to protect Dharma? Yeah, that's the point I wanted to come to. Just scrolling down there now. So this is the stage of, so how to come to that transcendental stage? Well, that's the whole process of Krishna consciousness, where you will act according to the direction of one's authorities. So regardless of what that may be. Yeah. And then Prabhupada gives some examples here. He actually gives some specific examples of Vishwamrita. He was originally a Kshatriya, but then he acted as a Brahmana. And Parashuram was a Brahmana, but he acted as a Kshatriya. So there's very specific circumstances there. So that's a devotee. A devotee acts according to the direction of Krishna, which is coming through the spiritual master. But here for Arjuna specifically, he's being asked to engage his nature. He's not being asked to go against his nature, because he's setting the example. So Krishna is using Arjuna as an example to encourage people to stick to their specific duties. But Krishna, in some circumstances, may make it known or may request that someone may act according to another's duty. And a devotee can do that because he acts according to Krishna's direction. A devotee, a 7% devotee, is transcendental, so therefore they can act according to Krishna's direction, and whatever that may be, because the principle is that they are servants of Krishna. And so Krishna wishes me to do this. Okay, now Krishna wishes me to do that. My spiritual master is engaging me this way. Now is engaging me that way. Yeah, that's a level of, that's a high level of Krishna consciousness where one can be engaged regardless of one's nature. And we see practically, we don't know, it's gone 7 o'clock, just his last point. We see, well, we can discuss tomorrow more. We see that some people join or take up Krishna consciousness, but they're not able to maintain a level of absolute surrender, just to do anything which they are told. And often that happens, and after a few years, then they have to find and be engaged according to their specific quality. Yeah. And then by engaging their quality in Krishna consciousness, then they become purified. Anyway, could be a big subject. Let's, okay. Hare Krishna. So, yeah, thank you, Dr. H.K. Das. He's mentioning, he's taken a lot of messages today. That's very good. So thank you everyone for joining us today. We'll just continue this discussion tomorrow. So if you can think about this. If you have any questions that come on this particular part here that we're reading, please, you can ask them tomorrow. So thank you everyone for taking part, and we'll take up from 3:36. Okay. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you.
Praise Murli Prabhu ki jai. Thank you.
Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama,
Hare Krishna, everyone. Thank you, Murli Prabhuji.
Thank you.